Here's what 20 historical figures actually look like in real life. To some degree, historical people are always veiled in mystery. If you weren't there to see someone's life firsthand, you'll always wonder what they were like. You may hear tales about individuals who lived long ago, but that's about all we know about them. We often don't even know what they look like. We sometimes don't even have an image of historical persons who lived more than a century ago. We just have a sketch to rely on, which may or may not be an accurate representation of that person's look. Fortunately, science has once again rescued us. Forensic scientists and anthropologists have been able to digitally reproduce the faces of innumerable historical characters, using statues, scans of skeletal remains, paintings, and sculptures of historical figures. Of course, there's no way of knowing whether these 3D drawings are accurate representations of the individuals who lived, yet the science is astonishing and the outcomes are breathtaking. Let's have a look at 20 historical personalities whose faces have been reconstructed in such a manner that you'll never look at them in the same way again. Annie Oakley. Wild West badass Annie Oakley. She was a world-class sniper. She defeated Frank Butler in a shooting contest at 15 in 1875, a humiliating loss in a sexist period. Strangely, the two married, and Annie continued to shoot until her death in 1926. The face repair makes her seem stunning in the late 1800s and early 1900s photos. She wasn't acknowledged for her beauty and skill. Dante Alighieri. Dante will always be remembered for writing the Divine Comedy. He shaped our views of paradise and damnation. We may now see him without pictures or sculptures some 700 years after his death. Dante aged poorly. He died aged 56 in 1321, although he may have been 10 to 15 years older. Of course, medieval poets had it tough. Emily Dickinson. Emily Dickinson's poetry was unappreciated throughout her lifetime. Nobody took a beautiful shot of her when she was alive, since much of her work was published and lauded after she died. Quality photos didn't exist back then. Emily looked cute in her CGI remake. If she were living today, she would have blended in among Brooklyn authors and hipsters. Nero. Nero, the final Julio-Claudian emperor, reigned for 13 years. Most historical chronicles of the period call him a jerk. He's also credited with starting the Great Fire of Rome by playing the violin. Nero died at 30 and was arguably too young to command such a vast empire. His revised photo resembles his busts. He appears like an angry, powerful young guy who wants to bully. George Washington. We all know George Washington, right? History books include several photographs of him. On the $1 bill, we see him often. Thanks to all the photographs, the face restoration looks much as most of us envisioned. Thankfully, the hair and facial expressions are accurate. Can you picture paying respect to our first president for years, only to learn he looked nothing like we thought? Jesus Christ. Everyone knows Jesus' appearance, right? He's presented in several movies as a tall, long-haired, and nearly attractive guy. The face reconstruction shows otherwise. The hair and skin are a little darker than expected. His hair is shorter and less flowing than in illustrations or people that represent him. This doesn't mean the church misled about Jesus' presence, but he's not what we expected. Johann Sebastian Bach. Scientists got Bach right. CGI of the Baroque German composer resembles his 1700 paintings. The hair gives it away. Bach was heavier than other renowned composers, thus the full, round face is accurate. Julius Caesar. The Julius Caesar face may be the most striking. It's understandable that Caesar's monuments and busts from 2 millennia ago aren't correct. We expected him to look different. He seems older than expected. He has a severe and forceful visage, which is fitting for a formidable king. He seems intent on overthrowing a global leader to regain control. King Henry IV. Henry the Great, often known as Good King Henry, was a controversial and bloody king. He survived 12 assassination attempts before the 13th resulted in his death. Several of his works express this strangely. He seems belligerent and arrogant. The face restoration of King Henry IV makes him seem more relaxed and joyful. He looks much older than 56 when he died, but allegedly a dozen murder attempts makes you age quicker. King Tut. Since his 1920s tomb discovery, King Tut became the most renowned Egyptian pharaoh. Before face reconstruction, he was almost unrecognizable. Most believe his tomb mask resembles King Tut. As his mummy was so well preserved for someone who lived 3,000 years ago, CGI proved unexpectedly successful in showing us his face. This isn't the face we expected for such a legendary pharaoh, but it's better than imagining he looked like his tomb mask. Mary, Queen of Scots. Mary is well known for succeeding her father, James V of Scotland, at 6 days old. She resembles the Queen of Scots in all her pictures. She died at 44, thus she never aged in pictures. Thankfully for Mary, her modern-day face reproduction is more favorable than many of her photographs. In the CGI rendering, Mary was adorable. Marie Antoinette. Marie Antoinette liked to stir up trouble. She was guillotined because of it. Most of her photographs show her dressed up and attempting to portray a lavish lifestyle. Today's leisure is different. Marie Antoinette seems like a pretty lady going to have coffee and spend Saturday afternoon in the park in modern clothes, not the strong, scary force she sought to be. Copernicus. Copernicus appears in most artworks as a solitary figure who made major discoveries. He's one of history's greatest scientists. He discovered that the sun, not the earth, was the center of everything. His current face restoration simply strengthens the idea that he spent all of his time on scientific discoveries rather than enjoying life. Copernicus seems older in CGI than in art. He lived to 70, which was remarkable for the 1500s. Nefertiti. Nefertiti's German museum bust is nearly as renowned as she is. Until scientists could digitally reproduce her visage, it was the greatest representation of her as Queen of Ancient Egypt. That's improved based on the CGI Nefertiti. The 1345 BC bust maker got it right. She has a strong jawline, slender face, and kind eyes. So ancient Egyptian Queen Nefertiti looked the part. Richard III. His brief reign as King of England was notable. Why else would Shakespeare compose a play on him? While much about Richard III is still questioned, we now know what he looked like. He seemed modest in most of his portraits. Scientists reconstructed a face with gentle features and flowing hair. But a vicious, power-hungry ruler may be seen in those artificially generated eyes. Robespierre. History remembers Robespierre poorly. However, his association with the Reign of Terror may have prevented the French Revolution. Robespierre doesn't look bad in some portraits and statues. However, modern technology has rendered his face unflattering. His skin is terrible, and his hair is worse than in portraits. For many reasons, he doesn't appear like someone you'd want to stare at. Saint Nicholas. Santa Claus is based on Saint Nicholas. He doesn't look like the plump, joyful Christmas Eve gift giver without the white beard. Modern face recreations are even less like the legendary beast we employ to discipline youngsters. The white beard's still there, but it's not as fluffy as we think. He's darker, therefore red wouldn't suit him. Cleopatra. Cleopatra is an Egyptian legend. Diana is recognized for her scandalous romance with Mark Antony and the art and literature she inspired. She's frequently beautiful in sculptures, but the current reproduction of her visage doesn't depict a beautiful lady who rose to fame. Her haircut resembles busts in sculptures. Cleopatra may have preserved her power by being wiser than everyone else. Simon Bolivar. Who else has a nation named after him? It distinguishes Bolivar in history. He liberated 6 nations from the Spanish Empire, therefore he might have more than one country named after him. As a hero, he has several statues. Bolivar's modern-day visage makes him appear more human and less mystical, but the CGI version makes him appear like a lifelong humanitarian. William Shakespeare. We believe we know what Billy Shakespeare looked like from the images and movies. This photo has thrown us off. Shakespeare's face looks old and worn. His eyes are weary, and his hair is mostly white and gray. He doesn't look bookish. He looks like a dodgy individual you'd meet in a parking garage to purchase something illegally on the black market.